You're listening to the Balanced Educator Podcast, episode number 118. Welcome to the Balanced Educator. We're your hosts, Kaylee
and Josiane from EduCalm. Our intention is to equip and empower you to feel more calm, balanced, and joyful in all aspects of your life.
Hello there and welcome. We are so happy to have you here with us today. In this episode of the Balanced Educator Podcast, we've invited grade 5 French Immersion teacher Julia Carreiro onto the show to talk about how she integrates social emotional learning and mindfulness across the curriculum for a holistic approach to teaching. In this episode, Julia is going to give you some great examples of cross-curricular projects she's developed that integrate English creative writing, French grammar, and coding with mindfulness and social emotional learning. Super creative stuff here. Julia also talks about the benefits she's observed from teaching mindfulness and social emotional learning on student well-being, mental health, and learning. She also discusses creating a positive classroom and school culture by integrating mindful strategies into her classroom and morning announcements with the whole school. This episode is going to give you some great ideas for how you can create a greater sense of well-being across the curriculum with your students. So mindfulness doesn't have to be just taught one time during the day, but it can be woven into your school day and into everything you teach in a really integrated way, and how that can have a positive impact on not just your classroom culture, but your entire school culture. Julia is also going to share some ideas for how you can use the EduCalm Classroom program to support your teaching and your integration of wellness in your classroom. Before we get into this awesome interview where you're going to have so many great takeaways, we are really excited to share this week's sponsor. Time Timer is a visual timer that is amazing for the classroom or at home that is clinically proven to increase self-regulation in children. So how this timer works is that it is a visual way to represent time that is passing. So it looks like a stopwatch kind of thing where you drag this color wheel up to the amount of time that you want to have on your timer. So then as time passes, students, children are going to see the color disappearing. So it's a very visual way to help students to manage time and to help with behaviors, to help with staying focused. There are so many great ways to use this. Now, what I absolutely love about Time Timer is not only do they have physical timers that you can put on a student's desk or in front of them that they can take into a corner when they're working, so many different ways of using it, but they now also have a desktop timer, which I love. So you can set different timers and save those timers. So if you have specific lengths of time that you tend to use for specific activities in your classroom, you can have them preset, and you can choose a specific name and a specific color for that timer so students can really get used to that routine and really get practice in understanding time. Josiane and I both love using Time Timer in our classrooms. It is such an amazing classroom management tool. You have to check it out, especially if you don't quite understand my description of what it looks like. I realize it's very hard to describe what something looks like visually. So you definitely have to check it out by going to timetimer.com/educalm. So that's timetimer.com/educalme. So when you go there, you'll get more information about Time Timer and you'll be able to purchase one for your classroom. They're also great prices, totally affordable, such a key tool to have in your classroom. All right, now let's get into this episode to talk about a cross-curricular approach to social emotional learning and mindfulness with Julia Carreiro. Hello, Julia. Thank you so much for being on the show with us today.
Thanks. It's nice to see you and feels super awesome to have been part of this project and to be able to share my experience and some of my knowledge with you and the rest of the podcast listeners.
Awesome. So can we start off with you just introducing yourself to our community?
Absolutely. My name is Julia Carreiro. The students refer to me as Madame Julia, and I teach grade 5 French Immersion in the Winnipeg School Division. And this has been I guess in September, I'll be starting my 6th year of teaching.
Awesome. So as a teacher in your 6 years of teaching, what have you found kind of like the most challenging thing that you're working on as a teacher?
That's a really tough question. I think trying to allow myself to continually grow and to push myself to learn and to evolve, but also ensuring that I allow space to be compassionate and caring and gentle with myself. So I don't have to be perfect and I don't have to strive to be a perfectionist. I can grow, but I need to still be kind to myself.
I love that. I think that's something that so many teachers are working on, especially in this community. We all just want to do everything for our kids. We want to be perfect right now. And it's hard to sometimes have like the patience to know, okay, throughout the course of my career, I'm just going to keep growing and getting better. And where I'm at now is perfect for now.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think that just understanding that I'm never going to reach a finish line where I say, okay, now I got it, because what I learn continues to change. The students continue to evolve. Technology continues to evolve. So being okay with change has been kind of tricky, but learning to be flexible and learning to kind of go with the flow and go with the changes as they come instead of trying to fight it.
I love that. That is wonderful. So you use Educom Classroom with your grade 5 students. What was it that made you decide to start using this program?
I started doing yoga actually in my teens. So my mom brought me to a yoga class and I thought, wow, I was really able to be present and kind of put my worries off to the side for that hour. And I found this profound peace that I'd never had before. And this was me being maybe 16 years old. So continuing on taking yoga classes, I then decided to train and become a yoga teacher. So I have my 200 RYT, and I really became passionate about mindfulness and mental health. And as I continued to grow in my teaching, I tried to weave that in. And it's really difficult when you're a French immersion teacher because there is such a lack of quality resources out there for us. And I had some training with my school division, but it was maybe a half day where we learned a few things. And even then, I had to do some of that translating myself. So as soon as I discovered the Educom program, it was like everything I had ever wanted in one beautiful bundle. There's French, there's English, there are visuals, there's audio, there's extensions and activities that the students can do. And it just felt like my perfect entry point to bringing that in, as well as touching on the French language component. And thinking about the students that I had this year, once I saw my classroom profile, I was looking at how can I support my students and their mental, emotional, and social needs? Because we know that if students are in that fight or flight brain or have experienced trauma or are struggling with mental health, there is no way that they can learn because they don't feel safe in their own body, they don't feel safe in their community, and they're just trying to survive. So my first goal was, okay, we need to tackle mental health, and that needs to be our priority. We need to establish relationships of trust within ourselves, within our peers, and within our classroom, and that needs to be key. And then we can start to work on getting out of our comfort zones and challenging ourselves a little bit. And then the academics will come, but they can't happen first. That's not our priority yet, because I knew that the mental health and social emotional wellness was our priority at the start of the year based on who I had as my classroom profile.
That's awesome. I love that you're seeing kind of that underlying current of, if students are struggling academically, it probably means that there's something deeper. They need to feel safe. They need to feel cared for. They need to get out of that fight and flight system so that their brain can turn on and be ready to learn. So how has using the EDUCOM Classroom Mindfulness program helped you to manage those things?
I introduced the program to the students in the beginning of the year, and I knew that for this particular group of students, the previous teacher had talked about routine being really key for them, and having our routine and our structure be really expected. So we tried doing a routine where after first recess, the lights would be off. I had my Apple Music playing, my chill, relaxing music in the background. And the students knew that our routine was come in, you can put your head down, or you can have your head up, eyes open, eyes closed. Some kids chose to sit on the ground. Some students who had flexible seating option or privilege at that moment got to be somewhere super cozy. And then we did our audio mindfulness practice together. And we would do that same, because we're in a French immersion program, most of the students speak English as their first language. So we would do the English audio on Monday, and then Tuesday through Friday, we would do the French audio of that same theme. And after Friday, we'd listen to the theme 5 times. And we would do our reflection at the end of the week. So we kind of had time to listen and to think and really reflect on what we got, and then could write about it. And I would take in the printables that I had printed out for them, and would look them over to see if they were connecting to the concept, if they were finding it helpful, if certain aspects were challenging. And some students would write like, I didn't like that. It was really hard. Like, okay, so that tells me kind of where to go next. And well, usually when things are hard, it means we need more practice with them.
Yes.
But that's kind of how we set up our routine. And I know for me, I'm very routine oriented. So we would start that way. And then every week we would try a new theme from that, like the portal that we have as ambassadors.
Awesome. So for those that might not know the EDUCOM Classroom program, I'll just explain it a little bit. So within the program, we have a bunch of different themes and then units within those themes. So the intention is to kind of stick with one unit for around a month, give or take, depending on what works for you. There's 5 audios in there. So Julia, you listened to one audio, the same audio for a whole week, correct?
Yes.
I understood that, right? Perfect. So some people will do that. Some people will listen to audio 1 on Monday, audio 2 on Tuesday, so that they're having a different audio every day of the week, but then they repeat the next week. So I always love hearing how specific teachers end up using it, because we say, here's how you can try it, but go with what works for you. So I always love hearing what ends up working for you. And then we have the printables. So that can mean, we have posters. So we have these visuals. We also have, reflection booklets that ask questions based on what students learned in that audio, so that they can reflect on what they learned. So you did those on Friday. That's a great way to get feedback and see, like you said, where students are struggling, how you can help them, what's hard. And that probably is a really good springboard for some conversations and some coaching that you can do with them.
Absolutely.
So one thing that I've really noticed with you is that you do a lot of interdisciplinary your style is kind of interdisciplinary, meaning that you're not just teaching one thing in one time of the day. You're kind of weaving in different learning outcomes from different courses throughout the day. And I've noticed that you're really integrating what students are learning in EDUCOM Classroom with some of the regular things that you teach. So could you explain, maybe give a couple examples of how you bring that EDUCOM Classroom learning, what they've learned there, into other areas of what they're learning?
Absolutely. I know that when we talk about holistic teaching, we need to ensure that we are making those cross-curricular links. So it's something that I'm striving to continue to get better at. one of the units that I think was the most successful was talking about the five senses. And that's one of the units in the EduCam program. So I started with talking about the five senses and having us do all of the audios and work through the printables. And every week we would have a new poster up to kind of jog our memory on what it was about. And then at the same time, I was planning to talk about descriptive writing in English. In the Winnipeg School Division, we work with the 6 traits. And I wanted the students to work on the ideas trait and have more detail to their ideas. So I found this book called The Imaginary Garden. And after starting to read it, I kind of had this creative idea that just came to me that said, well, what if you melded those together? So what if we did descriptive writing about your imaginary garden and then weave in the five senses? So the students and I did a little bit of optimal learning model working together, where I did a little bit to show kind of what it would look like. And then together we did some examples, and then I sent them off to do their own after that. So we talked about, in your imaginary garden, what would you be seeing? In your imaginary garden, what would you be smelling? In your imaginary garden, what would you be tasting, etc.? And it really allowed them to create such a descriptive paragraph and then connect to that mindfulness practice that we had been doing. And springboarding off of that, I wanted to start teaching ER verbs or reviewing ER verbs in French. So I thought, well, hang on a second. I can do those five senses, but in French with ER verbs. So then I had them doing, practicing how to write different verbs with their five senses. And then after that, I don't know where all my ideas came from in this fall, but I must have been in a very creative mindset, because after we had practiced writing our verbs in French, I thought, what would be neater than building on and making a Scratch project? So Scratch is a block coding program that's online through a specific university. I don't have it off the top of my head, but it's a free program, and the kids love block coding. And as soon as you give them a computer, they're always pumped. So they bought into it. So they used the five senses and their practice with English descriptive writing, which translated into French verbs, which then translated into them making a spooky story in French with the five senses using ER verbs. And that was like an incredible creative moment that I had as a teacher. And it was definitely like, okay, let's try this. And if it fails, then it fails. But for a lot of them, they really, really enjoyed the different ways that we showed our learning, and it consolidated the knowledge that I was trying to create with the repetition that was also varied.
That is so great. It's like we talk so much about the importance of routine and repetition and doing things over and over. And the fact that your students got to see this five senses learning, this mindfulness, being mindful of what you're feeling and experiencing with your five senses and integrating it in so many different ways, that's going to really sink in, and they're going to be able to hold on to that because they're getting their brain to reuse that information in many different ways. That's wonderful. I love that. And such a great idea. I bet you other teachers that are listening to this are like, oh my gosh, I'm going to use that now.
I hope so. And I would be so flattered.
So great. I will link in the show notes to those resources that you mentioned, so that listeners, you can check out our show notes, and then you can find that Scratch coding thing. And you had mentioned another resource. I'll go back and make sure that I don't forget to link that. So
for sure. I think even thinking about maybe my next step could possibly be moving towards an outdoor education or Indigenous perspective and connecting nature, especially because I teach grade 5. It would be a great segue to link this with social studies. The more we start to kind of brainstorm and really get creative without judging ourselves or creating any limitations, the more we're able to just create super unique opportunities for our students.
I love that. And it really ties into the meaning of mindfulness. The practice of mindfulness is paying attention to the present moment on purpose. Now, we do that with a formal mindfulness practice by listening to the Educom classroom audios so we can practice what does it feel like? How do I pay attention to the present moment on purpose and train our brain to come back to the present moment when we get distracted? But the whole intention of that isn't to just do it during the mindfulness practice. It's so that we learn the skill and we can bring that into our lives and be more present with our friends, be more present with the food that we eat. And when we're more present, we get to appreciate everything more because we're really experiencing it. And I love that you really took that into your teaching and allowed your students to do mindfulness in lots of different areas. And your idea of bringing it into an outdoor education scenario is just wonderful. We actually have in the 5 senses unit, a scavenger hunt for the 5 senses, and lots of teachers will take that outside and do the 5 senses scavenger hunt outside. I know for myself, I always loved taking my students outside to practice mindfulness. It makes sense, right? You're connecting with nature, you're connecting with yourself. It just goes so well together.
Absolutely. I think that's definitely something that I'll look forward to in the upcoming year.
All right. So this past year, we all got thrown into the fire with remote learning. And luckily, we have set up the Educom Classroom program so that you can use it for remote learning. I'd love to hear, how did you do that this year?
As teachers, we really had to be so creative and so quick with trying to continue our routines online for our students. And by this point in the year, we had spent most of our year together with our routines established. So for the students to be going home and to not have that structure in place and that caring adult who is there for them all day was really, really tough for some. So I wanted to continue our routine. So what I established was the exact same routine that we had in class, but using an app called Seesaw. A lot of different school divisions in Winnipeg have access to it and have licenses to it. It's fabulous. So I created an assignment where the students got to see the poster that was linked to the theme of the week. I attached the reflection booklet in the template section so the students could type or write directly onto it. And then I also downloaded and attached the audio. So the students who really, really benefited and appreciated this practice were able to do it every day with the routine, where on Fridays they did the reflection, and it allowed me to continue that social emotional learning and support that they needed, especially during this time where a lot of them would say to me, I'm feeling really anxious today because just thinking about the pandemic, and I'm having a hard time being okay with everything that's happening. So not only did it give them that structure and that routine, but Educom provided us with a lot of vocabulary and permission to talk about feelings and to talk about mental health, so that it became a normal part of our day, and students were able to casually in conversation tell me how they are feeling, and I was able to respond with, do you need support from me? I can validate how you're feeling, and I can kind of point you in the right direction if you're needing some extra support.
I love that. And that's just reminding me that that's feedback we get a ton from teachers, is just talking about how now they and their students have the vocabulary and the culture, the permission to talk about feelings, and that has made a huge difference in both the relationship you build with your students. You can obviously get closer with them when they are more able to articulate their feelings and how they're doing and know they can go to you for support. And they now have the emotional language to be able to explain how they're feeling. That's wonderful. So did you get any feedback from your students about how Educom Classroom and what they had learned throughout the year supported them during the big kind of challenges and changes that came with remote learning?
Absolutely. I think that most of them came most of the feedback was just through informal conversations. So sometimes we would be working on a topic, and someone would be really frustrated, and they would say that, oh, I just can't do this. And then I'd kind of give them this look like, what do you need right now? And they would take a moment and pause. Okay, growth mindset. I can't do this yet. And I'm like, yeah, and it's okay if it's hard, but you're doing your best. And then it kind of like reaffirms the, yes, I can do this. Yes, it's okay. It's hard. And how I'm feeling is okay. It's okay for things to be difficult and for me to be frustrated. And I remember one of my students saying to me, whenever we're sad or whenever we're mad about something, Madame, you never make us feel like it's silly. And you always listen. And you never tell us to stop being sad or to stop being mad and just get over it. You always make us feel like having emotions is not a bad thing. And in that moment, I thought, wow, these kids are getting that message from me and from this program, and that is huge. But then on the contrary, this work is so important because they're getting messages from other adults in their lives that are saying feelings are bad, being angry is bad, being sad is bad, and you shouldn't feel that way. So I think that was a moment that really, really stood out to me this year when that student spoke about that with me.
That gave me goosebumps and like little tears came to my eyes because that is just so wonderful. And that's really a legacy that we're kind of trying to build with this program, is that emotions are just being human and they're important. Emotions are messages that our brain sends to our body so that our body knows how to act in that situation. If we didn't have emotions, we wouldn't act sad when it's a time where we should be sad. If something difficult happens, if we're grieving, if, someone in our life passes away, or our connections are blocked with those people, it's right to feel sad. We don't want to feel excited or happy during those times. That wouldn't make sense, right? So just knowing that emotions are simply messengers in our body to help us act in a way that our mind is thinking. And for students to be able to understand that and they go, I'm allowed to be frustrated, then you can move past the frustration. Because if you're just stuck in the frustration, then you're upset because you feel frustrated and I shouldn't feel frustrated and don't have strategies to manage that frustration. You need to be able to name the fact that you're frustrated before you can then go and choose a strategy to manage frustration. So it just makes me so happy to hear that your students were able to better understand their emotions and be able to explain them and feel safe in your classroom because they are learning these emotional strategies. So how did the EduCom Classroom program support social emotional learning in your classroom and with your students?
Once we started to learn more tools and strategies from the EduChem program, I brought up the idea to the PBIS committee, the Positive Behavior Intervention Strategy Committee. I think that's what the acronym is, because I'm the chair of the PBS committee. So I said, hey, what if we did announcements and we had a theme of the week? So the principal and the committee and I decided that my classroom would be in charge of those announcements for a period of time, and we would see how it went. So we ended up going back to the classroom, and I told them that we were selected, and I really sold the idea, and they were pretty excited to be able to share their knowledge, since our classroom is the only classroom in our school to have done the EduChem program thus far, I believe. So we would take our different learnings, such as growth mindset, and also infusing some social emotional learning from other programs, to do these short announcements in the morning to give students different ideas of how they could tackle their day, or talk about, hey, 5-finger breathing today might be the perfect thing before you do an activity that makes you feel like you're out of your comfort zone. And the students would practice their writing skills in English and French. We would have them be bilingual. They would say what the strategy is, describe the strategy and why it's important, and then show how to do it. And it really had them focus on that descriptive writing, because if I'm telling you without showing you with my body on a school intercom how to do 5-finger breathing, you definitely have to make sure that your instructions are super, super clear. So it was a great writing challenge for them. It was a great way for them to be leaders in the school, since they're the second highest grade level. And I always had teachers come up to me and say, "Oh, I loved that announcement this week. It was great. Thanks for reminding the kids to take a deep breath before a challenging situation. It's so simple, but it was great to watch the kids practice it during the announcements." So that was something that was really neat that we did, that was integrating what we're doing in our classroom with EduCount, but also bringing it to our school community, which felt so incredibly powerful.
That is so great. What a wonderful chance for them to get to showcase their learning, be leaders, and share something that clearly they're finding helpful in their own lives and sharing it with other students so that they can feel that they're helping their school community as well. That is so cool. So I'd love to know now, kind of, what's your biggest takeaway from having used the EduCom Classroom program this year? Like, what was the biggest thing that you noticed maybe in your students or in your classroom culture or in your own teaching that you're going to take with you into the next year?
I think the EduCount program reaffirmed what I had previously thought about the importance of mindfulness and social emotional learning, and gave me that platform to actually implement something of quality, not only in the mindfulness aspect, but also in the French language aspect. And a lot of students would talk about the climate of our classroom and how calm and caring and respectful that it was expected for everyone to be. Not just me to the students, but them with each other as well. And it was really, really rewarding when they would say things like, "Well, Madame, you help keep us calm. You have a classroom where you're not yelling. You're not getting angry at us if we make a mistake. You're so patient with us in our learning." So I think that me being able to benefit from mindfulness practice is huge, because I can self-regulate. And if I can self-regulate, then I can help the students with co-regulating themselves, especially those who need more support. It's not that they're being bad or being disrespectful. It's that they are having a hard time self-regulating, and it's my job to help them do that.
Oh, that gives me goosebumps. I love that. That is so great. So if there's a teacher listening to this right now that's kind of on the fence thinking about, should I start using EduCom Classroom? Is now the right time? What advice would you give to someone that's just starting out?
I would say absolutely try, and I think that you can get a portion for it, like a portion as a trial run.
Yep, we have a free trial, which gives you our first unit, Introduction to Mindfulness, for free. And you also get a training video on how to set up the practice in your classroom and a bunch of other helpful resources. So you get a really good taste in that first unit that you get for free of what EduCom Classroom is like. So this way you'll know if it's the right fit or if you're good with just using that free trial, which never expires. So you have access to it forever.
I would say that that's the first step. In order to really sell it to yourself and to sell it to admin, then I think kind of diving in and seeing how you can implement it and maybe trying it, and then going to your administrator and saying, "Hey, this is a fabulous resource," especially if you teach French Immersion. Having resources that are bilingual are incredibly hard to find and often impossible. So this is going to save you so much time with the creation process, and you can give something that's already created and of incredible quality that I definitely can't create this on my own. So it exists. And I would definitely push for administrators and schools and divisions to support their teachers and support their students with their social emotional health health, and that Educam is an incredible program to foster that climate of healthy minds, especially with the last year and with the global pandemic. We need to make sure that our students' mental emotional health is the very first thing that we consider before worrying about tackling the curriculum, because we can't get there unless we support their mental health.
That is such a great message. Thank you so much for sharing all your tips and ideas and creative process with us. I am so excited for the things that you've shared, and I think people are going to get great ideas of ways that they can implement, kind of grab your ideas and run with them. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. It was such an honor.
All right. We hope that this episode gave you lots of ideas of how you can start integrating mindfulness in a cross-curricular or interdisciplinary way. That's a tough word to say. In your classroom and across your school. So thank you, Julia, for all those great ideas that you shared. All right, to get the show notes for this episode, go to educalm.com/TBE118. So again, that's educalm.com, spelled educalme.com/TBE, as in the Balanced Educator 118. So there we've linked to the Imaginary Garden book that Julia talked about and the Scratch coding platform, which is actually by MIT. So there's links to that there so you can try this out in your own classroom. And if you would like to start teaching mindfulness in your classroom, if you haven't already started our Educom Classroom free trial, what are you waiting for? You have to try it. It's free, it never expires, and it gives you audios, printables, activities that you can use in your classroom to integrate mindfulness in a really authentic way with your students. There's also a training video in there that's going to teach you how to integrate this in the classroom and get the most success, and some other additional materials that will help you as the teacher to get started with mindfulness in your classroom. So you can get our free trial by going to educalm.com, and you'll see on our website we've got plenty of buttons that bring you to signing up for our free trial. All right, so your exit ticket for today is just to think about how can you integrate mindfulness and social emotional learning in a cross-curricular way. Mindfulness doesn't have to be this extra thing. It can be an amplifier in everything that you do. Being more mindful just means being more present and aware of what you're doing now. And when we're more present and aware in this moment, we get to appreciate this moment even more. All right. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us. We appreciate you so much and all the work that you're doing in the world. You are amazing. If you got value from this episode, please share it with a teacher, friend, or a colleague that you think would get value from it too. Have a fantastic week.